Hi everybody, and welcome back to Kevin's Upfront Opinion. So today I thought I'd speak about how do you come to terms with the mistakes of your past? And that's the fundamental question. Now, I'm not going to pretend I'm any angel and that I've never made any mistakes, because I've made mistakes personally myself over the course of my life. Okay. And anybody that knows me knows that about 2 weeks ago, it'll be about 2 weeks today, I had a breakdown. I literally broke down and my wife threatened to section me 2 weeks ago today. Okay, and most people don't know, but know me. So very few people know what happened. One person from the job centre that I speak to on a regular basis. My wife, her family, my sister, even my kids don't know. And I mean, none of my children know what happened to me. Okay. And I literally broke down on the beach, started crying. I couldn't stop crying, to be honest. And like I say, my wife threatened to section me unless I started to get myself some help. So one of the first things I had to face up to and address was to take a look at my life. And this is probably a video I shouldn't really do because I've done it in the past. Well, I did it about a week ago, and my wife saw it. She went absolutely ballistic at what I said on the video. She didn't want to hear it about the things that I actually said on it. And that might be because it came across in the wrong manner. So when I look at my own personal life, okay, and I look at the mistakes I made, my initial biggest mistake, and this could easily be taken in the wrong context, happened 16 years ago. Okay. And it happened with an ex-girlfriend, but I've always cared a lot about. She may absolutely hate and despise me, but I've always cared a lot about her. Okay. And when I say I made a mistake, it wasn't about her falling pregnant or getting her pregnant or anything. That was never well, we never planned it, but it wasn't a mistake. The mistake was what I did. It was my actions and what it cost me. And when I say what it cost me everything. And I've had to live with that error and that mistake for 16 years. And when people ask me, well, what did it cost you? This is what it cost me. It cost me the first woman I ever loved. And it cost me my child. That's what I lost. Now, some people are going to say, yeah, but what did you do? Now, I'm not going to go deeply into what I did because the person I did it to isn't here to defend themselves, and it's not fair. And I would never slate her. I wouldn't. You know, a lot of people have said, why don't I? Because of the suffering I've personally gone through myself, because I've punished myself every day for 16 years. I may not go speaking to people about it, but I suffered personally in silence. I never spoke to anybody, never spoke to my wife about it, never spoke to my family about it, friends, nobody. One of my friends only found out about the child about 2.5 weeks ago. My best friend, that'd be Craig, and I've known him for about 25 years. Okay, we've been friends for 25 years, and he didn't even know. And the main reason he didn't know was because I had so much guilt for what I did. And I never hurt her, never hurt my ex-girlfriend, never laid a finger on her, never abused her in any manner or anything. I said some silly things to her, and they were very stupid things to say to her. And I sent one very naive and very stupid text message after she sent one of the nicest text messages anybody's ever on this planet ever sent to me. And in that text message she sent to me, and I will say what it said, was, "I will always love you no matter what." And you can probably imagine what I put back. Being a 30-year-old, I was 30 at the time, salesperson who's full of ego, because I was at the time, even though I was off sick, I was on long-term sick at the time, because I had suffered a grand mal epileptic seizure, a really bad one. I'd suffered partial amnesia due to that seizure because I had taken a heavy blow to my skull. So you can probably imagine what I said, and it wasn't a very sensible thing. And what I would say to any lad who thinks they're Jack the Lad and a smart ass and everything, don't go and write something stupid to a woman when they're pregnant, unless you're willing to face the consequences, because you may not like them consequences. And I'll tell you what, every single day is a living hell. It is my personal living hell. Even though I've got 5 other children, and it's like I've tried to explain to my wife, because she's tried to speak to me about it recently, and she said, "I know what you're going through." And I say, "No, you don't. You will never, ever understand what I go through on a daily basis. How badly I hate myself for what I did. You will never understand that. It's not for like what you experienced." Now, that was the worst thing I ever did. And you may say the consequences of what I lost were bad enough. But what I did after that was probably even worse. And why, as much as I may ask my ex-girlfriend for forgiveness, and she probably will never forgive me, and my daughter will probably never forgive me in a million years, okay, that will probably never happen. What I did after that was probably even worse. And why I say it was even worse was because I went down a route of self-destruction. And when I say self-destruction, because as I've already said, I'm an epileptic. Okay, suffered from epilepsy my whole life due to a brain injury I suffered at birth. Okay, I suffered from 3 types of epilepsy. Suffered from grand mal, clonic tonic, whatever you want, when they collapse on the floor and do all the shaky and all that type of stuff. I have absent seizure epilepsy, which is a bit like what you would see the Undertaker out of WWE being able to do, where they would roll their eyes back and you'd see the white, except the pupil would go up to one side, so it looked like that they're daydreaming. And then I actually have a third type as well, which is slightly rarer. Okay, so it's something I've had to live with. But what I did, because in a way I just felt sorry for myself, and I got to the degree I hated myself, I pulled myself off all my medication. Okay, pulled myself off all my medication, refused to see my doctors, my consultants, Southampton General. I was under one of the best neurologists and epilepsy specialists in the UK, which is a Dr. Prevet, Southampton General. Generally one of the nicest people I've ever known. One of the best doctors I've ever known. And I'm not just saying that because he's my consultant. I'm not. I've only dealt with him on a few occasions. I'm generally saying that because I've had numerous consultants at King's College Hospital in South or Southwest London, in Camberwell, and under Southampton General. And he is generally one of the best. He's probably one of the two best doctors I've ever known in my life. One would be at QA Hospital, okay, and Dr. Prevet at Southampton General. And they're both in different fields. One deals with pediatrics to do with children, and he's a neurologist. But I pulled myself off all my medication because I didn't care if I lived or died. And then I started doing drugs. And I've been anti-drugs all my life. And I did a mixture of Class A drugs. And I was smoking a lot of weed, even though I can't roll a joint or anything like that. I wouldn't even know how to roll one up, to be honest. But because of the people I've worked with in the industries that I've worked with, drugs weren't hard to get hold of. Then I started drinking a lot. I went in a completely opposite direction because I was always faithful, because that girlfriend I was completely faithful to her. But after her, I had affair after affair after affair. So if I got with a girlfriend, there was no way I was being faithful to her under any circumstances. Okay, I remember one particular girlfriend. Oh God, I feel really bad for this. Okay, it was Sarah. Oh God, I can't remember her surname. I remember her surname began with a W. Okay, and this is really awful. Within 24 hours, I cheated on her 3 times in 24-hour period, and that's absolutely awful to being able to openly admit. Even going up to my first marriage, I still carried on with the same behaviour because I worked in the home improvement sector, and I was all ego driven. Now, even though I never physically cheated on her, in some respects, a lot of people would say I did cheat on her. So I never went and had a physical affair, but I carried on messing about with other women, even though I never admitted it to her, never even admitted it to my current wife, what I used to get up to with her when I was with her. So I threw my first marriage away. And then within less than a week, I probably met my second wife. And there's no hiding from it. Okay. Her daughter hated my guts. She absolutely hated me. Probably saw through me, to be honest. And she was about 13, maybe 14 at the time. And I carried on, not for very long, but I carried on with the same behaviour. Never cheated on my wife. Never even considered it. She knows that I had been offered it on a few occasions in the early days, but I refused to do anything. And I remember one day, because I was working for Apple Home Improvements at the time, which are no longer in existence. And I was working out of the Southampton branch, and I was working with these 2 other guys. Now, they're 2 particular guys. I suppose you would call them the bad guys at the end of the day. So we were a bit of a rabble and used to get up to not a lot of good, to be honest. And I'm not going to go into the things that we used to get up to, but we used to get a lot of leads. And the team of four that we had got a lot of leads, did a lot of business for Apple. And I remember one day we stopped work early. We went round to one of our houses, and they were doing, if I remember rightly, they were doing ketamine. Okay, so you can probably imagine where I'm going to be going with this. And I still remember one of them called me and asked me to turn around. Turned around, my mouth was open, and they slipped ketamine into my mouth. Take me home, because they knew what I was going to end up being like, and I was high as a kite. And I remember my partner saying to me, "Have you taken anything?" I said, "No." And she said, "Are you sure you haven't taken anything?" I said, "Yeah. You know I'm off the drugs." And she said, "Do you want to go to bed?" And I said, "Yeah, okay, all right." And next morning, get the third degree, because she knew I had taken something. She didn't know what had happened, that somebody had slipped me ketamine. I have explained to her over the years what did actually happen. And at that moment, I realised I had to change my life, because I couldn't carry on going down the same road. Now, I know people that will say a leopard doesn't change its spots. People don't change. People stay the same as they are, which is generally correct. The only way people can change is if they truly want to change, if they've got a reason to change. And at the time, I only had one reason to change. Okay, and this is going to probably sound bad. Wasn't for my partner. That wasn't a reason to change. Because she would have loved me no matter what. And she still does to this day. Even with the comment that she made last night. And I only had one reason to change. Well, realistically, I had two reasons to change. One, which was the fundamental biggest, was to be able to try and find my daughter. That was reason number one. Reason number two was that my partner had a 13-14-year-old daughter. And if I was going to be a responsible person that she could look up to, I personally had to change, because I couldn't go on any longer living in that lifestyle. So what did I do? The very next day, I quit my job. A very well paid job that I earn an awful lot of money from. And I did earn extremely good money, considering I was only working 1 day a week. And I could easily earn £500-600 a day if I could be bothered to work. And I went and phoned up Safestyle and got myself a job at Safestyle. Now, at Safestyle, only lasted 2 weeks. And there was a reason I only lasted 2 weeks. And that was because I went and had a stroke. Well, when I say I had a stroke, they weren't entirely sure, because I was sat in a pub and I was leaned over a table and collapsed, and they never actually diagnosed it fully, whether it was my epilepsy or if it was a stroke. And a barman in the pub found me. It was in the Sailmaker in Gosport. And I got taken home because they knew where I lived. They knew my partner because we were regularly in the Sailmaker for roast dinner. And they got me home. And I got signed off work. And I was off work for 2 years. It was actually over 2 years, but it was around about 2 years I was off work for. And it gave me the time to turn my life around, try and become a better person. I believe I did become a better person, and move on. And I was able to build my own business. The argument has always been, was I a good stepfather to my daughter? In some respects, well, say stepfather to my daughter. Well, I've always considered her as my daughter. Some people would say, yeah, but she's not my daughter, she's my stepdaughter at the end of the day. Depends what way you want to spin it at the end of the day. But after all of that, at the end of the day, where have I failed? Where do I look bad on my past? So even though I managed to turn my life around and become a better person, I still can't face up to how I managed to fail my own daughter, my own flesh and blood. You know, no matter what may have been said about me, that is something I struggle with. And when I say I struggle with it, this is what I mean. When I say that I've struggled with it, all it boils down to is, at the end of the day, and my ex-girlfriend doesn't know this, and she did ask me recently, and I point blank denied it. And so, yes, I did lie through my bloody teeth to her. That at the end of the day, she asked me if I've ever had any mental health struggles, which is a fair question to ask, because mental health can run through families, through the genes and everything. No different to suicide and lots of other medical conditions. And I lied to her. And I hated lying to her because it's the one thing that really winds me up. And I denied it. But the reality is, I've struggled with mental health for over a decade. The only person that's ever known is my wife. She's the only person that knows. Yes, my stepdaughter does, but she doesn't know to what degree I've ever struggled with it. Gone through depression on numerous occasions, not just because of what I went through all those years ago, and obviously some of it is self-inflicted. There are other things that have added to it at the end of the day, and the only person that's to blame at the end of the day is me. Can't blame anybody else but me. So unless I'm willing to face up to that, which is what I'm trying to do at the moment, and why I've been getting help, I've got to face up to that. I've got to face up to what I've done to people, the destruction I personally caused, the people that I've continually let down, and the people I should have never let down. And that is something that's very difficult to live with, especially for me, because I've always considered myself as a family person. And even though my younger children, I like to say I've never let down. I've always been there for them, no matter what they need. My problem is the two older ones which would be my stepdaughter, my own daughter, I have let down. And that's something I struggle with. So I'm going to wrap it up because I've been rambling along for 25 minutes, almost beats my record. Okay. If this is something you can relate with, leave us a comment. Okay, on how you can relate with it. Okay, obviously, if you are new to the channel as well, if you could please subscribe, I would appreciate it as well. But for now, thanks for watching, and I'll speak to you all again a bit later.